Welcome back to the show. We have Genpact's Tiger with us, but before we get into conversation, let's take a look at how this wildcat shaped his career, right from his days at IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad.
Tiger Tyagrajan studied to become an engineer, but he always wanted to be around people, not machines.
I just couldn't imagine myself sitting in a room and doing research. I had no desire to work in a factory. So sales was always something that excited me.
And while most of Tiger's friends went off to the US after IIT, he made the tough decision to stay back.
So I was very clear that if I go to the US, very little likelihood that I'll come back. I didn't want to not come back. I think I'm richer for what I did than from an experience perspective, not from a money perspective.
For richer or for poorer, Tiger decided to get an MBA at IIM Ahmedabad. After graduating, he landed a job as a sales intern at Pond's and began his adventures in the corporate world.
That time, Pond's was launching a new soap. Pond's Dream Flower soap. What a disaster. but the launch was great.
Tiger may be a product of a prestigious IIM, but he expects his employees to earn their stripes.
We tend to prefer hiring people from campuses where people coming out don't have an automatic chip on their shoulder. So we don't go to IIM Ahmedabad and hire people. Now we hire a lot of IIM Ahmedabad people, but after they've gone around, lost their chip.
As a leader, Tiger admits he doesn't have all the answers, and so he surrounds himself with a diverse team of people who love what they do.
His energy and passion for his work, which just is very contagious. It rubs on everybody.
He is not directive. He's very approachable. He's very accessible. I don't think he's fussed about levels. I don't think he's fussed about where someone is in the hierarchy when he's dealing with them.
What would you be doing if you weren't running Genpact?
Teaching. I've always wanted to teach at a university, at a college. Don't know what, but it could be many things. I also think it keeps your mind really sharp. Agility of mind determines everything else, including your health. I think if you're in a class with 20-year-olds debating a topic, you will end up believing that you are a 20-year-old yourself. If you have an open mind and you have a learning mind.
Mm-hmm. And we know that you read a couple of Jack Welch's books, fell in love with the company, had a chance to go work for them. Tell us what you learned from Jack Welch while you were there and how you try to emulate him as a leader.
Many things. So he drove messages really well for a company that was so global, for a company that was so widespread, for a company that is so large. When I joined the company in '94, it was 300,000 people already. The importance of culture, I think, is the other big thing that I learned. And I think Jack spent a lot of time in culture building. And then in the aspect of that culture, how do you drive one culture when you have a company that makes aircraft engines and then also makes and sells healthcare equipment and then once in a while makes a movie, right? So, or runs a TV show. I think those are parts of the way Jack drove the company that I think are just fascinating and worth emulating, but very tough to emulate.
Okay, and how has having a name like Tiger helped you in the corporate world?
300,000 people running a little business, which is part of a business, which is part of a business, which is part of GE. If you have a name like Tiger, you get remembered more easily. Mm-hmm. So there's no question that brand recognition as an individual, I think, becomes easier when you have a name that's recognized. Particularly if what you've done is still not seen enough and it's still not been recognized enough.
Okay. You've also talked about the importance of gender diversity in the workplace. Tell us, talk a little bit about the challenges around that and what Genpact is doing to bridge the gap.
So the challenges are plenty, and here's the thing that I think we all must understand. Gender diversity is a problem across the world. I thought, before I got full exposure over the last 15 years, that actually the US or the Western European economies, gender diversity is not that much of a problem. That things are different. The reality is actually things are the same. These days, even in India, the proportion of women entering colleges and universities is much higher than it used to be. That you can actually think about having 1/3 or half your workforce as women as they come in. The question is, how long will they last? How do you create an environment where they are able to continue to build careers while still being able to live their life as a woman? So I think as a company, what we've done is really understood that in as deep a manner as we can. We talk a lot to women who go through these career events or life events. We then understand how do you create programs that allows them to talk to people about the events that are coming up, and therefore changes in their jobs, changes in their location, changes in their flexibility of how they work. And we try and fit in as much as possible.
We know that cloud computing is the new buzzword, and there's lots of small companies and startups that have gotten into that. Are you seeing demand from larger companies for this? And if so, how are you addressing it?
So there is a high degree of interest across the world in all corporations of all sizes around what can I do with the cloud. Large companies taking their technology applications and moving it to the cloud, not easy. Because the first step in that process is I want to pay my bills for my suppliers the same way. I want to run this process the same way in my company. And that's not happening. And they do the same thing differently everywhere. And they literally refuse to move to a common process. And if you don't move to a common process, you can't leverage the cloud. But I'll tell you, the biggest change that we are seeing is in emerging markets. Because these companies don't have legacy. They don't have a history. They don't have... And they're growing at 40%. So when you grow at 40%, legacy becomes unimportant because 3 years later, your legacy is actually small. So you can actually put all your new stuff on a new cloud platform, allow your old stuff to become smaller and smaller, and then over time you can give it up. So emerging market companies in India and China are jumping into the cloud much faster, which is fascinating because maybe some of these companies will become so effective and efficient and speedy that they will threaten companies in their industry that are more global and have a bigger history because they're stuck in that history.
Okay, and we'll head to a break, but before we go, here's a look at why Tiger doesn't engage in what's otherwise known as a typical corporate game.
I hate golf. I absolutely hate it. I can't watch it, I can't play it. I think it's too slow. I think it's too antisocial. I can't believe it's a spectator sport. Actually, it's not. 3,000 spectators don't make spectators. So, it's also a very elitist game. So I can give you 1,000 reasons why I hate it. My entire team plays it.